I was born in Dallas, went to private school, moved down to Austin, joined a band, man, started breaking all the rules, ended up on Wall Street.
Yes, yes, yes. Welcome to the Social Musings by Austin podcast. I'm your host, Austin from Austin. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And please do follow the show so you can be notified when there's a new episode. Either through LinkedIn or through my website, I have heard from so many of you who are either at the start of your career, or maybe you're considering life-changing professional or personal life decisions. I'm not at all surprised by the variety of individuals making this outreach, because I believe we are all living in what I call a liminal space. Well, what is a liminal space, you might ask? Well, I wrote an article about this in April 2021. And in the article, I remark that liminal spaces are transitional or transformative spaces. They are the waiting areas between one point in time and space and the next. Often, when we are in liminal spaces, we have the feeling of just being on the verge of something. I believe that we as a society are currently living in a liminal space. Many global citizens are hopefully at the cusp of beginning to resume their normal lives. Yet will life ever be what it was before COVID? Are we not in some strange waiting area between the past and the future? A past we know all too well, and an uncertain future that just seems just out of our grasp? Well, my COVID-induced liminal space told me to quit my high-paying corporate America job and try to live out my childhood dream. And with Social Musings by Austin, I want to entertain, inspire, and help you achieve fulfillment in your life by sharing my observations about society and a life well lived. My social musings, if you will. I've had a privileged and unique career experience, and I want to share the lessons I've learned not only from my career, but also in my personal journey from investment banker to becoming an Austin, Texas-based entrepreneur. Last month on the Social Musings by Austin podcast, I told the story of the denim jacket, which focused on my elementary and high school years. It was a tale of bullying at a fancy private school in Dallas that ultimately and ironically led me to my career in finance. If you haven't listened to this powerful story of shame and resilience, please do. This month, I share the story of my first day on Wall Street. After attending private school in my childhood home of Dallas, Texas, I matriculated at the University of Texas at Austin as a psychology major initially. Even though I enjoyed psychology, very early on, I remember thinking, what the heck am I going to do with my potential psych degree? And I transferred into the business school during my sophomore year, studying finance, believing this to be the area where hard work correlated highly with financial success. During my junior year of college, I applied for several prestigious investment banking internships, including with Goldman Sachs and J.P. Thankfully, I had excellent grades and was able to obtain one of the few interview slots offered by Goldman. Now, my Goldman Sachs interview was on campus, and I was trembling when I walked into the interview room and saw not one, but two stern-faced Goldman Sachs investment bankers just waiting to grill me. In the days leading up to the interview, I had read numerous horror stories about the brain teasers and logic questions asked to unsuspecting college students. And now it was me, headed to the Inquisition with 4 eyes, watching every bead of sweat drip down into my starched collar, suit and tie. The interview started off easy enough, although the only work experience on my resume was working at Abercrombie & Fitch at the local mall, which did not exactly give me Wall Street credentials. Not deterred by their initial lines of questioning, I was feeling pretty good, until they asked me, "So what did you like to do for fun?" Oh gosh, what do I say to that? I certainly did not prepare for a question like this. Truth be told, the thoughts going through my head were about hanging out on 6th Street in Austin and everything that comes with that, and I was not particularly keen to share such information with these two corporate stiffs. I demurred and mentioned something about liking to listen to live jazz, something I actually like to do, and the first thing that kind of popped into my mind as being acceptable. But I realize now it maybe sounded weird for somebody to say something like this at my age. They were not impressed with both my hesitation and the half-hearted answer I gave. Did they think I was a nerd? A liar? Probably both. Whatever it was, I did not get the Goldman gig. Lesson learned, though. Be your authentic self and you'll go farther. It's a heck of a lot easier to just be honest than to lie. All right, back to the drawing board. Well, my big break came shortly after the Goldman debacle. One of my family's friends ran the private equity division at J.P. Morgan in New York, and I was extended a special invitation to interview for a coveted Investment Banking Summer Analyst position, which, by the way, Time magazine had just named as one of its top 10 internships of the year, along with positions at NASA and the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. So, not a bad list to be in the company of. While I acknowledge a certain amount of nepotism was certainly on my side, the fact that I had a perfect 4.0 GPA at a top-tier state university, I believe, helped me ultimately secure an interview. However, it wasn't a typical interview. No. Typical interview meant an interview candidate from an Ivy League school, well, they would have 2 30-minute on-campus interviews. However, since I was not from one of those white shoe schools, my grueling interview schedule contained an entire day of 6 one-hour in-person interviews with either vice presidents or managing directors at J.P. Morgan's global headquarters located at 60 Wall Street. My strategy for the day was to assume a Texas twang, relax a little, and be myself. I can hear myself saying now, "Golly, it is sure nice to meet you," or "It's such an honor to be here," or "Yes, ma'am, thank you very much for the privilege today." Thinking back on this strategy now, I am not sure it had the highest chance of success, since later on I was teased incessantly for my out-of-place on Wall Street accent. However, my southern charm and knowledge of the music world amazingly seemed to work. In the morning, I had a great conversation with the head of the consumer retail team about Jay-Z and P. Diddy, and at midday, surrounded by 3 J.P. Morgan investment bankers, I safely avoided the pasta at lunch in the corporate dining room and instead picked sparingly at my salad, so I wouldn't highlight my uncouth table manners and embarrassing habit of getting whatever I was eating all over myself. As the afternoon went by and I had somehow managed to face the gauntlet of question after question, I finally started to believe in myself. That I did deserve this opportunity. That I might actually have a shot. Well, I remember it like yesterday when my cell phone rang a few weeks later. I was on campus walking to class, and I answered the phone. What just happened to be the Human Resources Department from J.P. Morgan calling, and they had accepted me into the internship class. It was a sunny spring day in Austin, Texas, and I had jumped and yelled for joy when I hung up the phone. Yeehaw! People were definitely staring at me, but I didn't care. This Texan was about to achieve his college goal of working on Wall Street. The investment banking internship at J.P. Morgan was to run for 10 weeks during the summer before my senior year of college. And the program began with a 3-day crash course in Excel. Basically financial modeling before you got your assignment, and hit the desk as your official first day is called. Mind you, I had never used Excel before in my life. I did not have my own computer at college. I used the computer lab for all my tasks, so I was definitely hiding the fact that I was completely lost when it came to spreadsheets. Don't they say fake it until you make it, though? Yeah, well, I was definitely faking the competency in Excel part. Yeah, so the 3-day training ended, and my first day after training just happened to be a Friday. And as I said, J.P. Morgan's offices were at 60 Wall Street at the time. And I recall walking down Wall Street at the tender age of 20 years old, thinking pretty highly of myself. To start the day, the senior executives hosted a breakfast reception on the top floor of the building, with sweeping views to the east of the river and of the World Trade Center to the west. During the reception, we hobnobbed with our fellow intern classmates, which included the sons and daughters of political and business heavyweights. As I went back to my desk, I was thinking, man, this is the greatest. Later that day, the clock showed 4:55 p.m., and all was going smoothly, meaning I had read the HR manual and other training manuals. I had answered some emails, met some of my coworkers. Oh yeah, and I'd even found the lunchroom. I was hoping that would be the sum total of my activities on my first day. You know, kind of ease into the whole adulting thing. Yeah. Well, little did I know that 4:55 p.m. is close to the hour of death for an investment banking analyst weekend. Oh yes, this dreaded hour from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Fridays can literally be a matter of life and death. If you're lucky, somehow miraculously, maybe a big project on which you were working gets postponed at the last minute. Or you finish a mandate and your boss goes on vacation. Whatever the reason, somehow your work plate is suddenly empty and your staffer is nowhere in sight, which means you get the weekend off. It's a rare situation many dream of ever since starting in investment banking. So you try and slither out before you get that dreaded phone call. If your seat is close to the elevators and you don't have to walk by the senior banker's offices, even better. I knew some analysts that would even hop into the stairwell and walk several flights down before getting on a homeward bound elevator. And I would not be this fortunate. My phone rang. Hello? It was my new boss for the summer. Now let me tell you about my boss. This guy, who was a vice president, was the smoothest and most polished guy I have ever met. His dress was impeccable. $3,000 tailored suits from London. Thomas Pink shirts and pocket squares. $200 ties that he would throw over his shoulder as he ate his every morning breakfast, a bagel and cream cheese from the bodega around the corner. He embodied Wall Street for me. He had spent time in our London office earlier in his career, and he was working now in the real estate investment banking group, where I spent my 10 weeks as an investment banking summer analyst before I went back to university for my senior year. Now, when my boss spoke, he sounded like a Brit, even though he was in fact from the deep south. A fact I actually didn't know until the end when we had clients in from Atlanta and he done let his twang come out. Well, anyway, on this Friday, my first working day, I was summoned into the boss's office. J.P. Morgan was working on a $2 billion equity offering, and they wanted me to build several sets of comps over the weekend, the results of which were to be used in the pitch book for the client at the start of the upcoming week. Now, unless you've ever been in investment banking, you probably have no idea what comps are. Well, investment banking and corporate finance is all about valuation. One way to gauge valuation is to look at other similar or comparable companies trade at, either in the markets or in sales transactions. Hence, this comparable company financial analysis is known by the term comps in investment banking. And comps is what I had to build over this weekend. Now, even for a seasoned junior investment banker skilled in Excel, this wouldn't be the easiest task. Yet I was brand new and had totally faked knowing Excel. This not only was going to be a daunting task, this was going to be my personal hell. And in fact, when the senior bankers left and it was just me all alone at the floor at 9 p.m., I had a nervous breakdown. I had somehow managed to fake my way through Excel training, but there was no way to fake this. If I happened to miraculously be successful in this exercise, I would have to spend every waking moment at the office trying to figure out just how to accomplish what they had tasked me to do. I thought about my situation. First, anger. My hopes for a pleasant weekend had been bitterly crushed when my vice president boss told me what had needed to be done by Monday morning. I mean, seriously, are they just waiting until the end of the day to come over and dump all over you, or what? Second, a healthy dose of self-doubt. I was sure of a lot of things in my life up until then and my capabilities, but I knew that this might be above my capabilities. Finally, despair. What am I going to do? I called my father and started crying. I can't do this, I said. He tried to soothe me, but I was inconsolable. At the end of our call, he told me just to think of it as a game, almost like pledging a fraternity. He said, they're just testing you. And plus, you're getting paid and getting great experience, so just do the best you can do and be satisfied with that. Well, I managed to pull myself together, and I left the office that night around 2 a.m, only to return from 8 a.m. until midnight both that Saturday and Sunday, which happened to be a regular occurrence for me in investment banking. And I'll continue to talk about this in future Social Musings by Austin podcast episodes to come. Well, Monday morning arrived and my superiors reviewed my work. Miraculously, I had somehow figured out the comps, and ultimately 10 weeks later, I got the full-time offer. My Wall Street career was off to the races. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Social Musings by Austin podcast, and stay tuned for more great content in the months to come. Enjoy.
My name is Van Gogh, and yeah, I'm from Austin. I've been around the world, seen a lot of things. Used to be in love, no more wedding rings. Ran up the streets, now it's corporate jeans. Met up with Austin, you know you can't stop it. Head in the west, you know we get it poppin'. Yeah, you know we get it poppin'. Switch up some things, now we live our dreams. Rapping on this track while Austin do his thing. Fell in love with cream, better choose the words, money ain't a thing. Catch us on the scene, you know we are a team. Put this on a repeat, yeah, so you can hear us sing. Put this on a repeat, yeah, so you can hear us sing. Put this on a repeat, so you can hear us sing, cause we from Austin.